Kristin, and you're listening to Podcast and Amplify, a podcast for women entrepreneurs who want to amplify their voice and brand through podcasting and grow a wildly successful business. I'm the executive producer and host of 2 shows and an entrepreneur, and I love helping women grow their visibility, mindset, and business to the next level. Each week, I share tips on how to launch and leverage your podcast, and I'm bringing on the very best business leaders to give you advice on how to build your business empire. Let's amplify your voice and business. Hey there, listeners. Welcome back to the show. It's Thanksgiving week, and this week I won't have an interview episode. I know this is a busy week and everyone's getting ready for Thanksgiving. I have a fantastic episode that I want to save for next week. I think you're going to love it. I love the conversation so much. But for this week, I thought I would still put out a solo episode and give you another weekly podcasting tip. So today's episode is all about why you need a podcast vision. I wanted to do the show because I think for some people, the idea of a podcast vision might be 2 things. 1, it might be intimidating. And 2, it might not be clear, like what the heck is a podcast vision? And if you don't know what that is, or you feel like that's something that's like, oh, I'm just starting with notes. I don't know what my whole vision is. Then I think today's show will be helpful because I'm breaking down exactly what I mean by creating a podcast vision. So most of my listeners are entrepreneurs. If you're listening, you're probably a business owner, or maybe you're a creative. But if you're a business owner, you know how important it is to have a business plan and to be really connected to your why for your business, what your business goals are, what you want your outcomes to be, how you want your business to feel. All those things are hopefully integrated into your business plan so you know why you're trying to do what you're trying to do and how you're going to get there. So a podcast vision is essentially the same idea. It's creating the foundation for your podcast for the very same reasons that you would do that for your business, so that you have a clear understanding of why you're creating the business that you want to create. So why you're creating the podcast that you want to create. It's really getting into things like knowing who you want to speak to, who do you want to invite into your community? What do you want to share with them? What kind of stories do you want to tell? Who do you want to highlight on your show? What kind of guests do you want to bring in? Who do you want to share your platform with? How do you want your podcast to impact your business? Do you want to get a certain number of downloads? Do you want a certain conversion rate from your podcast to people getting on your email list or actually reaching out to you to work with you? And then really digging into what is it that you are uniquely qualified to talk about, and not just qualified to talk about, but what do you want to talk about? What is the thing that you're so passionate about that you could talk about all day? Because that's really what's going to be the sort of magical element to your show, and it's how you're going to help people. So all of that is the vision for your podcast. So really, we're looking at your why. So I want to go into 3 reasons why this is such an important place to start. So having the vision is what helps you create the plan. And the plan is really that roadmap of getting you to where you want to go and helping you create that strategy for each next step that you need to take to make that vision of what you want your podcast to be a reality. And that having that plan is really what helps with any anxiety you might be feeling around podcasting. Like, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not sure I want to put my voice out there. And having your vision helps you create the plan of getting there. And when we have a plan, we feel like we're more in control because we are controlling what our next step will be. And it also helps you start to ask different questions. So rather than asking, can I do it? You're asking questions like, what do I need to do to make this happen? What tech do I need to get? What software do I need to get? What is my tangible next step? So the planning part is very important. And that really does go back to creating that vision. And you really do make more intentional decisions aligned with that vision. Okay, so the second thing that having a vision really helps with is it creates something that you can really get behind, that you're really excited about doing because you've thought through all of these really important things, the most important being, how is this podcast going to represent me and how is it going to help me serve my community? Those are two really powerful questions that you answer by getting into what you want your podcast to be and really fleshing that out. And that gives you that sense of drive and that momentum that I really want to make this happen because I know that it's aligned with me and it's something that is really going to help people and gives you the confidence because you know that you can help a lot of people with your voice, with this really magical thing that you've created around your strengths and who you are and how you help people. And that confidence will help you to execute your vision. Okay, so the third thing is it makes it much more likely that you will accomplish your goal of starting a podcast once you envision yourself as a podcaster, once you envision your podcast and what it feels like and the vibe you create and the voices that you're helping to put out there, your own voice that you will be putting out into the world. Because when you can really see and feel into that vision, you start to believe that it's possible. And our beliefs are just so powerful. It's why professional athletes do a lot of envisioning themselves winning. It gives them that focus and that confidence. And so they're not worrying about competing with others. They're just like focused on that goal and they feel and they start to believe that they can come in first or whatever their goal is. And really, most things start with our beliefs and what we believe is possible for ourselves and having clarity around our podcast and what we want it to look like and feel like. That really gets us like more than halfway there to achieving our goal. So those are the three things around visioning and why they're so important. It helps you create a plan. It gives you that confidence and knowing that it's aligned with you and your goals. And then it just makes it that much more likely that you will accomplish that goal because you've created the feeling and the belief that it's possible. And you can get really excited behind this idea. So those are just a few ways that creating this podcast vision can help you start a podcast that you get really fired up about and really excited about. You know, when I was starting my first podcast, I was very clear about the reason why I wanted to start my podcast, who I wanted to serve. And that was really helpful because starting your first podcast can be kind of scary. It can be intimidating. It can be overwhelming, all of those things. I'll tell you the story of starting my first podcast. So I started a travel podcast because I love to travel and I was feeling lonely just being a travel blogger. And I wanted to connect to other travelers in a really meaningful way. And I loved podcasts. So I thought, well, I can take that next step and become a podcaster. And then I will get to have these meaningful conversations with other passionate travelers. I've always valued diversity. I've always valued different perspectives and experiences that's played out in my life in a lot of different ways. So I wanted to bring those values into my podcast. That was part of my why, but it was in the middle of 2020, the summer of 2020, and we were experiencing a lot of reckoning around racial inequality, injustice. And I thought to myself, how could I really have an impact here? Because I was posting a lot online, and what I didn't want to have happen is for my support of Black Lives Matter, social justice protests to be performative. And so I thought about it and I thought, well, how could I be a part of the solution? How could I do something that is actually meaningful and making an impact? And so I realized that I was creating a platform through my podcast where I could highlight the diversity in travel experiences that I wasn't seeing. Am I seeing enough Black and Brown voices being represented in the travel space? And for me, the answer was no. So how could I use my platform to highlight those stories and experiences? Because I truly believe that storytelling is such a powerful way to help us see one another and to see where we are more alike than we are different. And so that's the kind of space that I created with my travel podcast, is showing diverse stories and perspectives. I could invite people on and share stories that, in my opinion, aren't seen enough. I wanted to show that there are so many different people out there who travel, and what do their stories look like? What do their experiences look like? So I was very intentional about who I was going to invite onto my show and whose stories I was going to share. So being so connected to this why was such a driving factor and motivator. And it's what really pushed the anxiety, the lack of confidence, the uncertainty out of the way and allowed me to create something that I really believed in and I really loved. So it also helps to have support along your journey when you're trying something new that you've never done before. A lot of us in business, we hire coaches because they can help us see our blind spots. They can give us some strategy. And that's what I'm here to do for you. So that's why I created the Overwhelmed to Aligned podcast intensive. It's a 60-minute one-on-one intensive with me. And we go through all of these very important things. I guide you through writing prompts, and you get the space to really think about the kind of podcast that you want to create, that you'll be excited about, that you'll be proud of, that you'll believe in. And that's really my goal. It's my wheelhouse in terms of how I can help others, is helping them to connect with creating something that is very meaningful to them. So I've created 2 podcasts of my own, and they are both so aligned with who I am, what my business goals are. So if you would like to work with me to help you create your podcast vision, so you know exactly where you're going, why you're creating your podcast, who it's meant for, and you can create something that's really aligned with you and what you want to put out into the world, you can work with me one-on-one through my intensive. I will leave the link in the show notes. The $97 that you invest in this intensive with me can be applied to either my podcast accelerator course or my VIP day, where we work together for one day to create your podcast, if you book those within 3 months of working with me. I would love to work with you. If you have questions, DM me or you can send me an email. And I hope that this show has given you some clarity around why a podcast vision is so important and how it can help you. And I hope that all of you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your family, if you're able to be with family, or maybe your family or your friends, however you're choosing to spend your Thanksgiving. I hope you have a restful day full of love and food. And I just want to say that one of the things that I'm so thankful for is each and every one of you who tunes in and listens to the show. Podcasting is something that I freaking love. And I'm just so honored that I can share this time with you and that you choose to spend this time with me. And I am certainly very thankful for you. So I'll be back next week with another podcast tip episode and a fabulous interview around dreams and why you should say yes to them. So I will leave you with that, my friends, and I'll see you next time. If you loved today's episode, please subscribe so you don't miss a show. And rating and reviewing this podcast is the best way to help support us. Always remember, your voice and what you have to offer is needed in the world. Until next week, take care.